Before a nation was born, its leaders argued in whispers, not about freedom, but about fear. What if independence failed? What if their names were erased as traitors? Behind the heroic portraits of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson lay doubts, secrets, and dangerous choices that could have changed history forever. In the middle of the 18th century, the 13 British colonies in North America were restless. Taxes rose, trade tightened, voices of protest grew louder. Yet independence was not an obvious dream, it was a terrifying gamble. Many colonial leaders feared losing their homes, their reputations, even their lives. Among them stood a quiet Virginia planter named George Washington. He was respected, disciplined, and cautious. Washington did not rush toward rebellion. He knew the British Empire was powerful, and he understood the cost of war. Letters from the period reveal a man who hoped for compromise, not chaos. At the same time, in Boston and Philadelphia, thinkers and writers were shaping ideas that would ignite a continent. Benjamin Franklin, printer and scientist, warned that unity was essential. He joked publicly, yet privately he feared that the colonies would collapse into rivalry. John Adams, passionate and sharp-minded, pushed harder for resistance, believing that liberty required courage, not comfort. By 1774, tensions had reached a breaking point. Colonial leaders gathered in secret meetings, debating loyalty versus independence. Merchants worried about trade. Farmers feared armies marching across their fields. Enslaved people wondered if talk of liberty would include them or leave them behind. The idea of freedom was inspiring, yet uncertain. Then came the winter of 1775. Armed clashes began near Boston. News spread slowly across muddy roads and frozen rivers. Families whispered at candlelight tables. Should sons join the militia? Should towns remain neutral? The future was unknown. In June of that year, Washington accepted command of the Continental Army. He stood before untrained soldiers, aware that defeat could brand him a traitor to the crown. His decision was not made in triumph, but in solemn duty. Across the colonies, leaders faced similar moments, choosing risk over safety, hope over fear. But these choices were only the beginning. Hidden disagreements, personal ambitions, and unresolved questions about equality would soon test their fragile unity and push the revolution toward a deeper and dangerous path. As battles approached and alliances shifted, the Founding Fathers would confront betrayals, impossible compromises, and moral dilemmas that history rarely shows, and the cost of unity would grow far higher than anyone expected. Even as the colonies declared independence, some leaders secretly doubted each other. Could a revolution survive its own mistrust? Letters vanished, loyalties shifted, and spies moved through crowded taverns, while men like Alexander Hamilton and James Madison watched nervously, wondering if the fragile dream of a new nation would collapse before it even began. By July 1776, the colonies took a step that shocked the world. They declared independence from the British crown. Church bells rang, crowds cheered, yet behind the celebration stood fear and suspicion. The new nation had no army strong enough, no treasury full enough, and no unity certain enough to survive a long war. In Philadelphia, delegates argued through hot summer nights. John Hancock signed the declaration boldly, knowing it could mean execution if the revolution failed. Others hesitated. Some feared their colonies were not ready. Some worried that independence would bring chaos instead of liberty. Meanwhile, British forces under the authority of King George III prepared to crush the rebellion. Ships crowded American harbors. Soldiers marched through city streets. Loyalists, colonists still faithful to Britain, shared information with royal officials. Families were divided. Friends turned cautious. Every conversation felt watched. Young officers like Alexander Hamilton rose quickly through the ranks. Brilliant and determined, Hamilton believed the revolution needed discipline and strong government.
others disagreed. Some leaders feared that too much power in one place could create another tyranny. These debates were quiet but intense. Across winter camps and smoky meeting halls, mistrust grew. Supplies were stolen, plans were leaked, small defeats shook confidence. Soldiers without boots marched through snow. Civilians donated food they could barely spare. Each sacrifice carried a question: would the cause survive? Yet moments of hope appeared. Victories at unexpected times lifted spirits. Shared hardship created bonds between colonies that once distrusted each other. James Madison, still young, studied political systems carefully, searching for a way to balance freedom with stability. He feared that without careful planning, independence might lead to disorder. The revolution was no longer just a war against Britain. It was a test of trust between leaders, between colonies, and between ideals and reality. The Founding Fathers were not united heroes carved in stone. They were anxious men, arguing, doubting, hoping, trying to build something that had never existed before. But the greatest trials were still ahead. As victory seemed possible, deeper questions about power, money, and human equality would rise, forcing the founders to confront truths they could no longer ignore. With independence declared, but survival uncertain, the new nation would soon face its most dangerous challenge yet: the struggle to design a government strong enough to last, yet free enough to honor its promises.
Winning a war was one challenge. Building a nation was another. What happens when victory exposes deeper divisions? In 1787, behind closed doors in Philadelphia, the very men who fought for liberty argued fiercely over power, representation, and control. The revolution had succeeded, yet the future of the United States was still uncertain. By 1783, the war had ended. The Treaty of Paris formally recognized American independence. Celebrations echoed across towns and cities. Soldiers returned home. George Washington resigned his military command, a powerful gesture that reassured many he did not seek personal rule. Yet peace revealed problems that war had temporarily concealed. In 1786, unrest in Massachusetts, known as Shays' Rebellion, alarmed national leaders. Farmers burdened by debt and high taxes protested against state authorities. Though the uprising was contained, it exposed how fragile the young republic had become. Some feared that without reform, the nation might fracture. In May 1787, delegates gathered at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. The meetings were conducted in secrecy. Windows were closed despite the summer heat. Guards stood outside. Inside, intense debates unfolded. James Madison arrived prepared, advocating for a stronger federal structure. He believed liberty required order, and order required balance. Small states feared domination by larger ones. Southern states worried about representation and economic interests. Northern states debated trade and taxation. Benjamin Franklin, now elderly, urged compromise, reminding delegates that unity demanded humility. The result was a carefully negotiated framework, the United States Constitution. It established 3 branches of government, each designed to check the others. Power would be divided, limited, and defined. It was an ambitious experiment, rooted in Enlightenment principles and shaped by hard-earned experience. Yet the Constitution was not immediately accepted. Critics, known as anti-federalists, warned that centralized authority could threaten individual freedoms. To address these fears, leaders promised amendments that would protect personal rights. These amendments would later become the Bill of Rights. The Constitution was signed in September 1787, but ratification required approval from 9 states. Public debates filled newspapers and town halls. Essays known as the Federalist Papers, written by Hamilton, Madison, and John Jay, defended the new framework with urgency and precision. The blueprint was complete, but trust was still fragile. The Founding Fathers had crafted a system of balance, yet beneath its structure lay unresolved tensions about leadership, about equality, and about the true meaning of freedom. As the Constitution took effect and a new government prepared to begin, the founders would confront an unavoidable question. Could their carefully balanced system survive the ambitions, rivalries, and moral contradictions that still divided them?
The Constitution was signed, but peace did not follow. Friends became rivals. Newspapers turned into battlegrounds. Could the fragile republic survive its own leaders? As George Washington took the oath of office, hidden tensions between Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson threatened to divide the nation before it even learned to stand. In April 1789, George Washington stood on a balcony in New York City, placing his hand on a Bible as he became the first president of the United States. Crowds cheered, bells rang, and hope filled the streets. Yet Washington understood the weight of the moment. The Constitution was only ink on parchment. Its survival depended on trust. Washington's cabinet quickly revealed deep disagreements. Alexander Hamilton, now Secretary of the Treasury, believed the nation needed a strong financial system. He proposed federal assumption of state debts, a national bank, and closer economic ties with merchants and investors. Hamilton saw stability as the foundation of freedom. Thomas Jefferson, serving as Secretary of State, feared concentrated power. He believed the nation should remain rooted in independent farmers and local authority. Jefferson warned that banks and centralized control could recreate the same injustices Americans had resisted under Britain. These debates were not quiet. Newspapers printed harsh attacks. Political factions formed, the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. Accusations of betrayal filled pamphlets and speeches. Washington watched with concern, hoping unity could survive personal ambition. At the same time, another contradiction haunted the young nation. Many founders spoke of liberty, yet slavery remained legal in several states. Leaders such as James Madison struggled with compromises made during the Constitution's creation. Some hoped slavery would gradually fade, others depended on it economically. The nation's ideals and realities stood in painful tension. Foreign policy brought new challenges. Britain and France, once rivals in the American struggle, demanded loyalty as war erupted between them in 1793. Washington declared neutrality, trying to protect the fragile republic from another devastating conflict. Critics accused him of favoritism. Supporters praised his caution. Every decision carried risk. Washington's farewell address in 1796 warned against permanent political factions and foreign entanglements. He feared that rivalry could destroy the republic from within. His words were careful, measured, but they revealed deep anxiety. As new leaders prepared to take power, the Founding Fathers realized something troubling. They had built a system of checks and balances, yet they could not control human ambition. Political rivalry had become part of the nation's life. The promise of liberty was real, but incomplete. The future of the United States would depend not only on laws, but on the character of its people and on whether its leaders could place unity above pride. With Washington stepping aside and rival parties rising, the young nation would soon face crises that tested its ideals in ways the founders never fully imagined, revealing secrets, consequences, and legacies that still shape America today. They built a republic, but could they foresee its future? As George Washington stepped into history, new leaders like John Adams and Thomas Jefferson inherited a nation filled with promise and contradiction. The Founding Fathers were celebrated as heroes, yet their unfinished choices would echo across centuries. When Washington retired in 1797, the peaceful transfer of power became a powerful example for the world. John Adams assumed the presidency, guiding a nation still unsure of itself. His administration faced tensions with France, leading to the quasi-war at sea. Fear of foreign influence pushed Congress to pass the Alien and Sedition Acts, laws that limited speech and immigration. Critics warned that liberty itself was at risk. In 1800, Thomas Jefferson defeated Adams in a bitter election, yet the transition remained peaceful. Jefferson called it a revolution of ideas, not violence. He reduced taxes, trimmed the army, and emphasized states' rights. But the contradictions of the new republic remained unresolved. One of the greatest was slavery. Many founders had spoken of equality, yet millions lived without freedom. Some leaders believed the issue would fade with time. Others feared confronting it would destroy the fragile union. The compromise delayed conflict, but did not erase it. Decades later, the nation would pay a heavy price. Economic questions also shaped the young republic. Hamilton's financial system had stabilized credit and trade, yet debates over banks and federal authority continued. The Louisiana Purchase in 1803 doubled the nation's size, raising new questions about governance, representation, and expansion. The United States was growing faster than its political traditions. As years passed, the Founding Fathers grew old. Letters between Adams and Jefferson, once rivals, revealed reflection and regret. They spoke of unity, education, and civic responsibility. They hoped future generations would protect the republic they had struggled to build. On July 4, 1826, the 50th anniversary of independence, both Adams and Jefferson died within hours of each other. Their passing symbolized the end of an era. The architects of the revolution were gone, leaving behind institutions, ideals, and unanswered questions. The secret history of the Founding Fathers is not one of perfect heroes. It is the story of human beings, brilliant, flawed, determined, who tried to design a nation based on liberty while living within the limits of their time. Their achievements were remarkable. Their compromises were costly. Today, their legacy lives in constitutions, debates, and democratic struggles around the world. The United States became a lasting experiment, not because its founders were perfect, but because their ideas invited future generations to improve what they began. There is no next chapter written by the founders themselves, only the chapters written by those who followed, asking the same question they once faced: how do we protect freedom while learning from the shadows of our past? What did you think of this video about American history? If you enjoyed it, we regularly upload many informative and knowledge-based videos on this channel, so please consider subscribing to stay connected with us. Thank you for watching the video until the end.